The Rebel Capitalist Show.
It's so relevant to what we're seeing on multiple levels, not just here in the United States, but globally with the World Economic Forum, global elite. I mean, they call it stakeholder capitalism, and they call it a partnership between the private and the public sector. But when you read between the lines and interpret that in normal human speak, it's just basically Marxism or it's economic fascism.
Yeah.
So I think you guys saw that, and that maybe is what led you to writing the book. But can you start there for us?
One thing I would say about that point, just specifically, is we obviously have this Russia-Ukraine situation happening globally, and if we trace back to kind of where this really escalated, I mean, obviously there's tensions with Ukraine going way back, but in October of 2021, Putin went to the World Economic Forum and gave a speech, much like Trump went and gave a speech in 2017. And in that speech, he said that, look, all you guys with your wokeism, blurring the lines between men and women and families, and you think that's progress. But he said specifically, almost quoting him, he said specifically, the teachings of Marx and Engels are nothing new. We've already tried these in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution. So he specifically said the teachings of Marx and Engels, which is what the World Economic Forum is trying to push in. He says, that's not new. We've already had that in the Bolshevik Revolution, which was starting, 1917 through the 40s. We've already seen what that's done, and we want nothing to do with that again. And so I'll start with that just because I know you talk about the WEF a lot, as I do as well. And a lot of people think this is something new, or we haven't seen it, or we don't know where this goes. But no, we do. And Putin said specifically, it was these teachings that they're trying to promote that already showed the world what happens when we do those. So I think we'll start opening it up with that.
And Alex, do you want to quickly just give your background? My audience knows Mark extremely well, but they might not be as familiar with you. So can you do that? And then I'd like to discuss kind of this re-engineering of human hardwiring and how that was kind of the premise of what we saw with Stalin. And I think that's kind of the premise of what they're talking about with the World Economic Forum as well. But first and foremost, Alex, can you kind of give the Reader's Digest of your backstory?
So really briefly, I've been an entrepreneur all my life. So I was very academically strong. I came in like the top percentile in the country for like mathematics and physics and things like that. And I went to study engineering, but I dropped out of university because I felt like everyone around me was an idiot. And I ended up going basically what I call today gambling on the stock market. And this was when I was a young kid, 19 years old, pre-GFC. Made a bunch of money, thought I was a genius, and then lost everything in 2008. And kind of went down the whole gold, silver rabbit hole and kind of became a hard money advocate. I was a gold bug in 2010, 2011. And then after that sort of went into the entrepreneurial phase. So I built a few software companies, had a few successes, had a few major failures. And it was probably 2015, 2016 where I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And where most people know me from is I built one of the first Bitcoin accumulation apps. So kind of like a Cash App of Australia, or a Swan, probably more closely resembles what we did in Australia. And alongside that, I've just been prolifically writing. So I think I've probably written a couple million words in terms of blogs over the last couple of years, primarily focused around Bitcoin, freedom, liberty, sovereignty, etc. And I have a little podcast on the side, and that's probably where most of my effort goes. And yeah, my big mouth has kind of got me into a hot water a couple of times. So I've kind of stepped away from the entrepreneurial fray, and now I'm doubling down on writing. And this book with Mark is our first foray into the publishing space. And I think it's going to be one of those books that I think just land well because it's short, it's concise. It's got a few solid ideas that people can glean from it and then take away. Instead of they don't have to go and read Human Action to understand, 1,200 pages, right? They can get something solid out of 80 pages. And I think we did a good job condensing it. And yeah, so that's a bit of background.
So do you guys, in the book, do you talk about this concept that seems to be prevalent with the central planners, where they believe they can re-engineer human hardwiring? And, one of the things that just I don't want to go off on a rant, but about I haven't watched a movie in years. Actually gone to the movie theater because
Yeah.
what's the point? Why have this woke garbage just crammed down your throat? And I actually went and saw the Top Gun movie like a couple weeks ago, and a friend suggested it, and I came out of the theater. I'm like, well, that was great. That was actually a really good movie.
I said the same thing.
It gave me hope
Yeah.
that I'm like, well, maybe we're just this is all cyclical and we've turned a corner. And maybe because we have a recession or, movie producers have to make a profit now and their share price doesn't just always go up. So maybe we'll see some good content. And then riding this high of optimism, I went and saw the Thor movie.
Oh no!
Gosh,
You didn't.
I mean, it was horrible. It was absolutely unwatchable. If I wouldn't have been there with a date, I would have walked out after the first 10 or 15 minutes. I mean, it was the woke agenda on steroids, like I have never seen before. Every single character, they had to tell you what their sexual preference was. Whether it was some, rock monster or some gal that they tried to call was a king. And I mean, it's just nonsense.
Wow.
So my point is, to me, this is the globalists or the World Economic Forum, their influence on the people that are the useful idiots at Disney, trying to re-engineer human hardwiring because they don't like it or they think that's possible to try to take us to this utopian society. And so anyway, I didn't want to go off on a tangent there, but I just had to get that off my chest. So how do you guys incorporate this into your book?
I think it's a really interesting point. So there's a saying which is, when nothing matters, everything matters, right? So when you're completely gender fluid and when you're completely woke and when you're completely open-minded that your brain falls out, like there's nothing actually matters and nothing means anything, and we sort of move into this world of like nihilism and meaninglessness, and and that's effectively the core issue of communist or collectivist ideologies, is that they try and strip. Like I saw it in I was at Whole Foods the other day and there was a magazine with like this Buddhist and it says, no self, no suffering. And I'm like, what's wrong with these people? Like all this like push towards no self and ego death and, we're all in this together, and like these kind of collectivist mantras, which kind of sound nice to the hippies on the surface, are all sort of steps in the direction of eliminating the individual and creating a wave of automatons. Because when you're trying to centrally plan anything, what you need is simple numbers in a spreadsheet. You can't create a model for a complex system, because when you have unique individuals that are complex in nature, they screw up your models. So you have one of two things. You either discard the models, which would basically eliminate the very need and existence for someone like the WEF and a central planner, or you try and pigeonhole everyone into becoming a mindless member of the masses, as I like to call them, or as the game, the lemmings, right? Remember, like the people who just walk off into the lava. Like you need lemmings, and you need to wind them up, point them in a particular direction, remove ego, remove individuality, remove personality, remove nuance, and have, as we sort of state in the book, central planners want automatons that they can plug into a spreadsheet and, hey, look, our model works. Now, please renounce all of your individual agency and let us do the job for you. Like that's their ideal world.
I think it even goes a little bit deeper, if I may just add on to that. So I think if you look at Marxism, and this is again good old Uncle Klaus Schwab, everybody's favorite James von Villen, as you would say, George. What is he promoting, right? Own nothing and be happy. So really, what Marxism isn't just rewiring necessarily, which it is, but what they think is that if they can remove all of these things that humans strive for, they can get rid of that human spirit that strives for things. And so that's the own nothing and be happy part. And so what Marxism really believes is that if we take away everything, then there's nothing for humans to want anymore. Ooh, I want that old classic car I can restore. Ooh, I want this new house by the beach. If we can take all of that away, then there's no more desire, there's no more strive. And so then we'll all just be happy. Own nothing and be happy. And so that's really at the core of it. So Yeah, unwinding that, or as you said, reprogramming the human spirit. But of course, if there is no drive, no desire, then how do we have any progress? And so obviously it seems like it would be a disastrous situation, but that's really what they're pushing.
Yeah, and it seems every single time they try to re-engineer the hardwiring, it leads to hundreds of millions of people getting murdered. That's usually the end game.
Unfortunately, history hasn't been kind to that. I did a video recently explaining how in Sri Lanka, how that collapsed. They're going to be the poster child for the WEF, and they were going to change farming. So it was an attack on farming, however you want to classify it, change fertilizer or whatever, but they attacked farming, co-opted farming, exports plunge, production plunge, exports plunge. They have no money and everything fell apart. Same thing happening in Holland, right? Attacking the farmers in a little bit different way, but co-opting the land, attacking the fertilizer. Same thing in, Trudeau can't be left behind. So Canada's doing the same thing.
New Zealand's doing the same thing as well.
Yeah, New Zealand, right? All over. And I said, and even in the United States, they are as well. And so I said, let's look at this through a historical lens, and let's only go back 80 years, right? So back to Stalin, for example, what did they do? They nationalized the farming. What did Mao's Great Leap Forward do? They nationalized farming. Now, what was interesting about both of those is they both, Stalin and Mao, had a 5-year plan of industrialization. Both of them were a 5-year plan for industrialization, move people from farms into cities, but it was this transformation. And what are we doing? We have an 8-year plan by 2030 to reindustrialize or transform the entire energy system that we have today. So it's instead of a 5-year plan, it's an 8-year plan, but the same attack vectors. And if you touch a stove and you burn your hand, the next time you touch the stove, you're going to burn your hand again. And that's exactly kind of where we're at.
Yeah, exactly. Alex, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I just saw on Twitter today, and Mark, you just nailed it. Stalin demonized the farmers, and now all of a sudden the World Economic Forum is doing the same thing.
Yeah, like free will is a bitch when you're trying to run the show, and it's always this pesky thing that gets in the way, and you wanna eliminate that. It's kind of whether people are secular or religious or whatever, like you can call it the randomness of the universe, you can call it the spark of life, you can call it the, God, you can call it divinity, whatever the hell you want to call it. But there's something about human beings, there's something about life, which you just can't fit in an equation. It's not a sterile, it's not, and I've spoken about this in previous essays that I've written where I say, like, we've swung so far to the realm of like the empirical, because back sort of in the Renaissance time, and then what followed with the Enlightenment, there was such an amount of progress made in the world of the empirical, where we figured out all sorts of stuff with math, with science, with reproducible patterns. And what we did was we saw progress occur there. But that is the realm of what I call the study of matter. Now, the study of what matters, that doesn't progress in the same way. The study of what matters generally stays consistent throughout time, because what matters is more like, philosophy and morality and things like that. Morality doesn't evolve in the same way as studying matter evolves. Like when you're studying metallurgy or, electricity or something like that, you can compound on that. Whereas the study of what matter and morals is kind of like there's a golden thread, and the golden thread persists all throughout time. You perform in a certain way, tit for tat, you do the right thing by others, private property, etc. Like, don't steal other people's shit. That doesn't change depending on what new mathematical discovery we've made. That's kind of like a consistent line. Now, what we seem to have done over time, and you look at who the communists were inspired by, they were inspired by the idiots in the French Revolution, the Jacobins, and those idiots were inspired by Rousseau, who believed that human beings are these moldable creatures, right, much like metal should be moldable. So it all sort of builds on this sort of mix-up of trying to apply the principles of the study of matter to the study of what matters. And we think we can just mold fucking morality based on our technological surroundings. And that's what these monkeys in the WEF and everything think that, we're just lumps of clay and just slap them together and place them here. And I don't know, I've kind of said as a joke that, Klaus Schwab, like if reincarnation was real, I'm pretty sure Klaus Schwab is Karl Marx in like Modern Skin. The guy's like been reincarnated into this bald German guy, lost all his hair, and now he's bitter about it, so he wants to take over the world again.
Yeah. And they've actually been preaching this since 1971. It's not like this is, people just have heard of the Great Reset as of the last year and a half or so. It's become popular. But this is just the same repackaged garbage that they've been spewing since the early 70s. And you go back to the Club of Rome in late 60s, and that goes back to Thomas Malthus in the 1800s. It's the same, it's the same
story,
battle
yeah.
cry over and over and over and over and over again. And it always leads to the same place, or the solutions are always the same. Just give us all the power and all the control, and everything will get better.